There are moments in life when silence feels heavier than words. When you close your eyes and whisper a prayer, but all you hear is the echo of your own voice. You wait for a sign, a stirring, a gentle nudge in your heart, but the heavens remain still. It's in those moments that faith feels fragile, like a candle flickering in the wind, struggling to stay alive. You tell yourself to hold on, that maybe tomorrow you'll hear something, feel something. But as the days stretch into weeks, and weeks blur into months, you begin to wonder, has God forgotten me? This thought comes softly at first, almost as a whisper of doubt, but then it grows. It finds its way into your mornings when you wake up tired, your nights when you stare at the ceiling, your quiet walks when the world feels too loud inside your chest, and you start to feel invisible. There was a time when everything made sense, when you could look up at the sky and feel a presence, when a gentle breeze felt like an answer, when the timing of a stranger's kindness felt like a divine reminder that you were seen, loved, known. But lately it's been quiet. Too quiet. You go through the motions, smiling when you need to, working, taking care of responsibilities, but deep down something aches. It's the ache of unanswered prayers, the ache of waiting, the ache of silence. You tell yourself you shouldn't feel this way. You should have faith. You should trust. But faith in its truest form is not about never doubting. It's about holding on through the doubt. Maybe that's what this silence really is. Not absence but invitation. An invitation to trust, even when your heart trembles. An invitation to lean into stillness, even when everything inside you wants to run. An invitation to see not with your eyes, but with your soul. Sometimes the most profound conversations between you and God happen without words. They happen in the tears that fall quietly onto your pillow. They happen in the deep breath you take when you're too tired to keep fighting but you choose to get up anyway. They happen when you stop trying to hear something, and simply choose to be with Him in the silence. There's a kind of sacredness in the quiet. The world doesn't honor silence anymore. We rush, we scroll, we fill the space with noise. But maybe that's why silence feels so uncomfortable. It reveals what's been hidden beneath all the distractions. When the noise fades, you're left alone with yourself. And maybe that's where faith begins again. Not in the thunder, not in the lightning, but in the whisper. Imagine this moment. You're sitting by your window, the night outside is still. There's no sound except your breath, the faint hum of life continuing around you. And somewhere deep within a thought surfaces, not loud, not clear, but real. I'm still here. You don't know where it came from. Maybe it was a memory. Maybe it was grace. But it feels like warmth spreading slowly across your chest. Like a small flicker of light saying, you haven't been forgotten. You're not alone. This silence isn't empty. Because silence can hold presence. Silence can hold healing. Silence can hold love so vast that it doesn't need words. The truth is, we don't always recognize God's presence because it doesn't always look the way we expect. We look for burning bushes and booming voices. But sometimes it's just the steady rhythm of your heartbeat reminding you. You're still here, still breathing, still held. So if you're listening right now and it feels like heaven is quiet, take a breath. Let the quiet be what it is. Maybe it's not punishment. Maybe it's preparation. Maybe it's the gentle pause before a beautiful beginning. You're not forgotten. You're being refined. Sometimes God is silent because He's close enough not to need words. Because He's already working in ways you cannot see. And when you finally look back one day, you'll realize that silence wasn't empty, it was sacred. So tonight, before you sleep, don't rush to fill the quiet. Let it breathe. Let it teach you. Let it remind you that love doesn't always speak in sound. Close your eyes, place your hand on your heart, and feel the quiet beating beneath your skin. That's not just your heart. That's life whispering back. I'm still with you. And in that whisper, maybe, just maybe, God is speaking after all. There comes a moment when the silence doesn't just feel heavy. It starts to hurt. It presses against your chest like a weight you can't shake off. You wake up one morning, look at the ceiling and realize you've run out of words to pray. You whisper, God, where are you? But it sounds like nothing more than breath fading into the air. You want to believe He's there. You want to believe He's listening. But all you feel is the echo of your own longing. You go to work, you smile, you nod, you say, I'm fine, when people ask how you're doing, but deep down you're unraveling quietly. Every small disappointment feels bigger than it should. Every delay feels personal. And when night comes, You find yourself scrolling through your phone just to avoid the silence of your own thoughts. That's how it feels when faith collides with exhaustion. When the prayers you once said with confidence now sound like questions you're afraid to ask out loud. When you've done everything you were supposed to do, trusted, prayed, waited, and still nothing moves. But maybe that's when God's work is the deepest. Not in the noise of miracles, but in the hidden places of waiting. Not in the answers that shout, but in the whispers that teach you to listen differently. There was a woman once. She sat alone every evening by her window, watching the world turn gold and then blue. Her husband had passed away 2 years before. Her children had moved to different states, busy with their own lives. Every night, she lit a candle and said the same simple prayer. Lord, please don't forget me. At first, she felt his peace when she prayed. But over time that peace grew faint. The house felt colder. She kept lighting the candle, but sometimes she wondered if it even mattered anymore. Then one night a storm came. The power went out. The darkness swallowed her small home whole. The wind howled through the trees like a wounded thing, and for the first time in a long time she felt truly afraid. She reached for her lighter, her candle, her small light of habit, and whispered again, "Please don't forget me." But the lighter wouldn't spark. Her hands trembled. She began to cry. And that was when she noticed it, the faintest glow outside her window. A neighbor she barely knew had lit a lantern and set it on the porch, shining softly toward her home. The wind was still wild, the house still dark, but that light, small, fragile, found her through the storm. She sat down, tears warm on her face, and smiled for the first time in months. In that moment she realized, maybe God hadn't been silent. Maybe he'd been speaking through other hearts all along. The silence isn't proof of absence. It's an invitation to look deeper. Sometimes God's answers come disguised as the ordinary. An unexpected kindness, a stranger's smile, a friend's text right when you need it most. But when your heart is tuned to disappointment, it's easy to miss his gentle fingerprints in your day. Maybe the silence is teaching you to see differently, to see grace in the places you once overlooked, to recognize that you don't have to feel God to be held by him. The truth is, every person who has ever walked by faith has faced the silence. Even the strongest believers, even the ones who speak about miracles and answered prayers, they all have stories of waiting, of wondering, of aching in the quiet. But they also have stories of breakthrough. Because faith isn't built in the comfort of knowing. It's built in the discomfort of not knowing, and still choosing to trust. The silence becomes the soil where trust grows roots. It's the space where your prayers become less about what you want and more about who you're becoming. Where you stop begging for an outcome and start yearning for presence. It's where you learn that God doesn't just want to change your circumstances. He wants to change you within them. And that's where the transformation happens. That's where the silence begins to sound like a language you can finally understand. Because maybe silence isn't the absence of God's voice. Maybe it's his breath, steady and close, holding you while your soul learns to listen in a new way. Imagine yourself sitting at the edge of a lake just before sunrise. The water is still, the air is cool. You've been waiting all night for something, anything to happen. Then slowly the first light touches the water. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. But suddenly everything changes color. That's how God speaks in silence. Not always with words, but with light that quietly finds you. You realize that maybe you've been searching for the wrong kind of sound. You've been waiting for thunder, but he's been whispering through peace. You've been looking for a miracle, but he's been building patience. You've been asking for answers, but he's been shaping your heart to receive them. The silence hasn't been a punishment, it's been a pause. A sacred space between your question and his unfolding response. And sometimes the most loving thing God can do is stay silent long enough for you to hear your own soul. Because buried beneath the noise of fear and longing is something truer. A quiet trust that says, even if I can't hear you, I'll still believe you're here. That moment, the one when you finally stop demanding answers and start resting in the mystery, is where faith takes its purest form. Maybe that's what the woman with the candle learned that night. That light doesn't always come from the sky. Sometimes it comes from the porch next door. Sometimes it comes from a stranger's kindness. Sometimes it comes from within, the spark that never really left even when you thought it had. She didn't need to hear a voice. She just needed to feel seen. And maybe that's all you need too. Because God's silence isn't indifference. It's intimacy. He's close enough to trust your heart to stay, even when he doesn't speak. Close enough to believe you'll keep seeking, even when you can't see. If you're in that quiet place right now, I want you to know you're not alone in it. You're walking through something ancient and holy. Every person who's ever loved, lost, waited, or wept in prayer has walked through this same valley. But the valley isn't the end. It's the in-between. And if you listen closely, beneath the silence, you'll hear it. Not thunder. Not music. Just the faint, steady heartbeat of grace saying, "Keep going. I'm still here." Morning comes quietly without fanfare. There's no trumpet in the sky. No revelation written in clouds. Just light, soft and steady, seeping through the blinds. The kind of light that doesn't demand attention but invites you to notice it. You stretch beneath the covers and listen. The world hums faintly, birds outside, a car engine somewhere, a neighbor's door closing. It's all so ordinary, and yet it feels different somehow. Because after so many nights of pleading, so many hours spent waiting for an answer, something has shifted. Not in the world outside, but in you. You realize the silence hasn't broken. It's still here, surrounding you like a quiet sea. But now it doesn't scare you. It soothes you. It's strange how peace sneaks in, not as a shout but as a sigh. You think about all the moments you almost gave up, the nights you doubted, the days you tried to carry yourself through sheer will. And you see them differently now. They weren't wasted. They were teaching you how to breathe without panic. How to wait without despair. How to love without needing proof. You sit by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the morning unfold. The trees sway gently, light dancing on their leaves. And for the first time in a long time, you don't feel the need to fill the silence with words. Because maybe silence was never a wall between you and God. Maybe it was the doorway. A doorway to something deeper. A quieter kind of knowing. The kind that doesn't depend on miracles but on awareness. The kind that doesn't ask, "Why aren't you speaking?" but whispers, "I know you're here." You think about the woman with the candle. You can still picture her. The storm outside, the darkness, the single light glowing from her neighbor's porch. She didn't get her answer in thunder. She got it in gentleness. In that moment she realized what you're realizing now. That maybe silence is the language of love too. Love doesn't always need to explain itself. Just is. Maybe God's silence has been his way of teaching you that love doesn't need to perform to be real. That his presence isn't proved by noise. It's revealed in stillness. That faith isn't about feeling something every day. It's about choosing to stay, even when you feel nothing at all. You take a deep breath. It feels easier now, lighter. The silence hasn't disappeared, but it's no longer empty. It's full. Full of memory, of patience, of quiet strength. There's something sacred about realizing you don't need to be rescued to be whole. You don't need every prayer answered to be seen. You don't need every fear gone to walk in peace. The healing comes in waves, not dramatic, not loud, just small, consistent ripples that remind you. Life is still moving. Grace is still flowing, and you're still here. You remember a moment months ago when you sat in that same spot crying, asking why God had turned away. And now sitting here again you smile through tears. Maybe he never turned away. Maybe you just had to grow quiet enough to see where he'd been all along. It's funny how easily we confuse silence with distance. But now you know silence can also mean nearness. The kind of nearness that doesn't need words because it trusts connection. Like two souls sitting together in peace. No need to fill the air with anything but presence. Maybe that's what true faith feels like. Not certainty but surrender. Not clarity but comfort in not knowing. Not a roadmap but a willingness to walk, step by step, even through the quiet. You look outside again. The sun is fully up now, golden and soft. You see kids running to a bus stop, a man jogging past with his dog. The ordinary rhythm of life continuing, and it's beautiful. The world didn't change overnight. But something inside you did. You no longer feel the urge to demand, "Speak to me." Instead you whisper, "Thank you for being here." Because somewhere along the way the silence stopped being something to survive. It became something to cherish. You realize the silence taught you to listen not just to God but to life. To the way your heart beats slower when you stop rushing. To the way peace feels when you finally let go of needing every answer. To the quiet reassurance that you are exactly where you're meant to be. Even if you don't yet understand why. This is the secret the silence wanted to give you all along, not information but transformation. You thought you needed a voice, but what you really needed was space. Space to breathe, to trust, to rediscover the steady rhythm of divine love, underneath the noise of your own fear. And in this space you finally see it. God doesn't only speak through words. He speaks through time, through stillness, through the soft unfolding of things you didn't even realize were being prepared for you. Sometimes the silence is the sound of seeds growing underground, unseen but alive. Sometimes it's the sound of waves receding only to return stronger. Sometimes it's the heartbeat of grace, slow but certain. You close your eyes and smile. You can almost feel it now, that gentle, invisible presence wrapping around you like sunlight through sheer curtains. You can't explain it. You don't need to. It's peace. And peace doesn't need to shout to be real. You whisper again, this time not as a question but as a quiet declaration. I trust you, even in the silence. And in that whisper something releases. All the tension, all the worry, all the need for control, it melts away. You don't need to have it figured out anymore. You don't need to rush the timing. You just need to stay open. The silence that once frightened you now feels like home. It holds you soft and kind, reminding you that every unanswered prayer is not rejection. It's redirection. That every delay is not denial. It's design. That every quiet moment is an invitation to grow closer, deeper, steadier. And maybe one day when you're walking through another valley, you'll remember this one. This morning, this peace, and you'll know. The silence wasn't punishment. It was presence in disguise. You finish your coffee and rise to start the day. There's work to do, people to meet, life to live. But you carry something new with you. Not certainty, not answers, but stillness. And that stillness will become your prayer. You'll move through the world with a quieter strength, knowing you don't have to hear God to trust Him. You don't have to see the plan to believe in the purpose. You don't have to rush what's unfolding to rest in what's already promised. Because you've learned something that few ever truly learn. Faith doesn't begin when you hear God's voice. Faith begins when you can't, and you stay anyway. So wherever you are, in whatever silence you find yourself tonight, remember this. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. You are being refined in the quiet places no one else can see. And one day the things that don't make sense now will bloom in perfect timing. Not a second too soon, not a moment too late. For now, let the silence hold you. Let it teach you. Let it heal you. And as you close your eyes tonight, may your heart finally rest. Not because you've heard an answer, but because you've found peace in not needing one. When God feels silent, He's not gone. He's closer than breath. He's whispering through the stillness. Be still and know that I am here. And in that quiet knowing you'll realize, He was never silent after all. If this message spoke to your heart, take a deep breath and know that peace is already within you. Subscribe to Faith Whisper, and let your soul rest in quiet grace.